Are you ready? Mr. Brookhart.
Here.
Mrs. Cooper.
Here.
Dr. Gatachu.
Here.
Dr. Green. Mrs. Heater.
Here.
Mr. Huron.
Here.
Mr. Reichert.
Here.
Mr. Vognetz.
Here.
Mr. Clauser.
Here.
A temporary president must be elected. The purpose of the electing a temporary president.
Excuse me, please turn on your microphones.
Okay. A temporary president must be elected. The purpose of electing a temporary president is to run the meeting until the election of a new board president. The board will take action to elect as a temporary president to run the meeting until the election of the new board president. Okay. So I open the floor for nominations for a temporary president. No seconds are necessary. I nominate Wayne. Any other nominations for a temporary president? Going once, going twice? Sold. Do we need a vote? Because he's the only nominee?
Yeah, I think you would say the board will take action to elect.
Okay. The board will take action to elect Mr. Burkhardt as temporary president to run the meeting until the election of a new board president.
I'll have a motion and a second, please, for that.
A motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now, Mr. Brookhart, right,
Okay, I think we have to switch. Back there, huh? Okay, Item 3.1, election of a board president. Board will take action to elect president for the upcoming term, beginning today, until corresponding date in 2023. I'd like to open the floor for nominations for president. No seconds are necessary. Are there any nominations?
I nominate Wayne.
Seconds necessary. Any other nominations for the position of president? Else? Okay, we'll close the nominations. Roll call vote. Terry?
okay, I'll call out your name and then, well, I guess it's just a yes or no anyway. Mr. Clauser.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu.
Yes.
Dr. Green. Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichert.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Move forward with the remainder of the reorganizational process. Election of a vice president, number 4. Open the floor for nominations for vice president. No seconds are necessary. Nominees.
Nominate Richard.
Nomination of Richard. Any other nominations
Who
other
was
than
nominated?
Richard?
Dr. Green.
Sherry Cooper.
Okay, we have a nomination of Sherry Cooper. Any additional nominations for the position of vice president?
I don't know if it was heard. I nominate.
Yep,
Okay.
we got you, Dr.
So we have
Green.
Rich and we have Sherry. Anybody else? Nomination for vice president? Okay, we'll take a vote.
Okay. Mr. Clauser.
How are we voting?
Oh, you,
Choose
just
either
tell
one.
me, you have,
The name.
Are you both
I
accepting?
decline.
Sherry, you're going to decline?
I'm declining.
So we're left with Richard. Any other nominations? Start the vote.
okay.
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green, Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
No.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Burkhart.
Yes. Meeting dates and locations for the 2023 calendar year, number 5. See a file attachment.
So which,
Oh, you're moving, go ahead.
Wayne, which one are you looking at? Where? Which
Vice
item?
President, we finished. I'm on number 5, meeting dates and locations for the upcoming year. Am I in the right place?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, we have to establish our meeting schedule for the upcoming year.
Oh, I apologize.
The board has to,
Yes.
just that was in case that was helpful.
Okay. Do we have any suggestions for a process for the upcoming year? Anything different than what we're doing right now? I know there was some talk about the current structure with the Committee of the Whole and any voting meeting. Is this something we want to review? Do we want to stick with what we're doing? This would be the time to discuss.
I'm sorry, Wayne, would you repeat, please?
Yes. Do we want to take a look at the structure that we've adopted? I think that was about May. We decided to go Committee of the Whole, then a board voting meeting without committees meeting separately. This is the time. If you want to make a change to that, we should bring it up this evening so we can set our schedule for the upcoming year. I know,
I
Richard,
would,
you had some thoughts you had mentioned earlier.
yeah, I would actually like to go back to regular committee meetings instead versus committee as a whole.
Regular committee meetings with one voting meeting a month, but no Committee of the Whole.
Well, I think I agree. I spoke to Richard before, and I don't know if we have achieved a goal, or maybe we should define a goal and see how we can achieve the goal. Because for me, the Committee of the Whole has become a very passive and more or less no detail, skim through topics type of meeting that I thought was not producing anything.
Right.
As opposed to if there were committees, then in the finance committee you have an hour, you go through the finance building, different committees go through details. We didn't have that with Committee of the Whole. I feel like we probably are better off either separating into committees and having it the way we had it in the past, or maybe the Committee of the Whole would be a committee where every month it will focus on something. But if it looks like it's ineffective, I think we should go back to the committee.
Okay?
I actually think it was more well-informing for everybody that was involved in the committees than versus the committee as a whole, where we're just getting presented objects, items, and we're expected to vote on them the next week.
I'd agree with both of you. I don't know whether to attribute it to the change in superintendents. We had an outgoing superintendent, then an acting, now a new superintendent, or whether we just, because of the time of the year, committees aren't quite as active through the summer and then in the fall, but here we are, it's December, and I do feel that we have not had nearly as much robust discussion as we need going forward. So, and my concern always was with those separate committee meetings that things happen out there that never come here. So the committees have knowledge and they're talking about things and hopefully not acting on them, and the rest of the board is not always aware of all the things that have been discussed. That was just my concern when we did that before, but I don't have any problem with what you're saying. I actually think it's the better path to go, and just protect from, we had a couple things last year we said, hey, the board didn't know. Well, I don't know that the board would know everything that happens in those committees, but there are a couple things that definitely slipped there, and we want to make sure it
So-
doesn't happen again.
Yeah, what I see is that, for example, if you take finance,
Yeah.
itself will take about an hour. I mean, we had finance committee meet every month for an hour, curriculum committee meet for an hour every month, and even that was not enough because of so many details that we need to discuss. And so how do, if it was committee of the whole, how do you achieve those? Because
I'm sorry,
No, go
I
ahead.
think we solved some of that, if I can just go back to Jen, when we asked you to really define what a quorum was, and your response, and correct me if I'm wrong, is if we want to be there, we can be there. We
Right.
just can't participate in a voting type setting. So if you want to go to one of the committee meetings and hear everything, we can do that. We don't have to limit to 3. Well, 3 in the committee, if 4th, 5th, 6th want to be there, they can certainly do that. I think that kind of solves that problem in my mind.
Correct. We just recommended that, any I'll call them visitors to the committee meetings, then that they don't really participate, because that way then we're not getting into that fuzzy area with discussion so, yes, but anyone is certainly welcome to attend a committee meeting if they want more information.
Okay. Any more thoughts on this?
So we're talking about going to committee meetings then?
Well, I think we would allow whoever is chairing the committees
come.
to run their committees as they choose, like they did before. Really, what we're going back to is what we were doing in February, March, and April before we made the change in May. That's what we'd be doing. We would have one voting meeting a month, and we would have committee meetings at the discretion of the people on the committee and scheduled by the chair. And a lot of them I know were scheduled the same night as the board meeting. You just had them earlier. But you don't have to do that. You can do that as you choose. Anybody else? Comments? We're going to have to get a
No, I'd rather
majority.
go back to the way it was.
You're in
prior
favor of
to
that,
May.
Daryl?
Yeah,
Okay,
prior to May.
okay. Anyone else? What do you think, Chris, former president?
I don't know, I don't think we gave the first one a good shot. I think the structure and the transition you talked about had a lot to do with that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'll go with whatever the majority wants to go with. I can live with it either way. Do we want to go with a motion to return to the previous structure with one voting meeting a month and committee meetings at the discretion of the committee chair and members? Does that sound all right? Can I get a motion to that effect, and we'll take a
I'll
vote?
make a motion to that effect.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
The only thing I'd like to just maybe add, maybe it's not the time or place, but I think we have to agree on structure.
Mhm.
I think that in some sense that they became an opportunity for complete interaction by non-board folks, and it became a complaint session.
Yeah.
And I think that's totally a defeatist approach to it. So I think if we're going to go down the road, which it sounds like we're agreeing to, I think we have to agree to structure, how that gets facilitated in that session, and then turn it into something productive and not a constant complaint session.
Well, let me ask, if we say Robert's Rules of Order are in effect, we're going to have 2 public comments, beginning and end. Does that satisfy, because I understand what you're saying, that it becomes,
I think that's the way it's supposed
I
to
think
work,
it
right?
should actually run that way.
I mean, I'm not asking to change the rules, but I
Yeah.
know from my involvement, they were different in different settings, and then in many cases, or enough cases, that it constant complaint session.
I've seen
And
it
we
that,
gave a lot of time to people just to make it that. He doesn't go through hierarchy, chain of
Yeah.
command, and the right processes to find productivity in those type of environments.
I've seen it here in other places, yes. Okay. Any other discussion before we vote? Gary, you ready? This would be, the motion is to return to the previous structure, one voting meeting a month, committee meetings at discretion of the members. Dr. Need, you're okay with all that? All right.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes?
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Dr. Green, Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Okay, the second thing, evening that we're going to have our voting meetings. Is there any thought on that? Is it something you want to stick with what we're doing now, or do you want to look at other nights?
So we're currently second Monday.
Yeah, I know this
Look,
is not my
Mondays.
chosen one, but I'm going to go with the majority.
We are on the second Monday of every month now, right?
Yeah, I like the Wednesdays
So-
we did before, but I'm going to, whatever the majority wants to do, that's what we'll do.
Not to be too selfish, but for me, the second week always works because of how my life has changed
Yeah,
significantly. I don't mind Monday or Wednesday,
yeah.
but if you guys don't mind avoiding the first week of the month, I should be able to attend.
Second week is fine if there's no objection.
Second Monday of the month's fine.
Monday, second one? Okay.
Majority.
Okay.
Motion?
Motion to approve Monday, second Monday of each month.
make a motion.
Voting meeting,
Second?
second. Terry, you want to go through a vote here?
Yep. Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Dr. Green, Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes.
Wayne?
Yes.
Could I just throw one thing? It's
Sure.
digressing half a second. I just thought about, do we have to decide the frequency of the committee meetings in this forum?
I don't know. that we-
Framework to that?
I think we're leaving it to the discretion of the committee heads, but I would hope they'd, at least initially, I'm hoping at least once a month, but I know athletics, it was once every 3 months at one time.
Yeah, we set it up for once every 3 months unless it was something popped up.
So to answer your question, I don't know that we have to decide that if we're going to give them discretion, but I think there should be some parameters that the board.
That's what I was getting.
Some expectations
Didn't know
that
if
we
we had
set.
to decide it here,
Yeah.
but I just
What are
think
your
we
thoughts?
shouldn't leave here without,
Yeah.
I think it's warranted. Some of them are worthy of more, and some of them, like I said, if we manage them correctly, I think we can get away with.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think,
So I know each one has their own nuances, but I think if we stand behind the practice and protocols to steer everything through the proper channels and chain of command, I think less things end up at the doorsteps of committee.
Okay.
I don't know that we have always done that to the extent, but it's not anybody's fault, it just is.
Mhm.
So I didn't know how that
Okay.
gets ultimately decided, because I know we've moved it several.
yeah, if we're okay, let's stick with what we just spoken about, and if we need to come back and be a little more specific and establish some parameters, we'll do that.
Okay.
Okay? Everybody all right with that?
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, Terry, things like representative of VOTEC, where do we get into those? Do we get into that now? Because I don't see that listed here.
Well, what
I
I
know we have
I
committees.
have that listed on the committees.
Okay.
And what I can do is,
Could you go through them?
that's
Okay,
exactly.
because I don't have a list here, and I know there are
Okay.
quite a few.
Okay, leave me. Okay, so right now, as we speak, on our Finance and Budget Committee, we have Dr. Gatacho as chairperson with Mrs. Cooper and Mr. Vognetz.
Okay, I was looking more at the things
Oh,
like
you ju-
VOTEC,
Oh, okay, you don't want to go
liaison,
through the
things
other
like that.
committees? We're not
I'll
changing
take-
any?
Yeah, we can, but
Okay, you want the other ones first?
what are the other ones? That's what I'm asking, because I don't see them.
Okay. The VOTEC, we
right
have,
here. In your, like your VOTEC,
Got the wrong one, Richard?
SIU.
yeah, I actually had it on there as an attachment,
Let me look at yours. Yeah, and that's what I see, attachment, but nothing.
right?
Okay, let's go through them then.
VOTEC.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay, so for the EITC, we have Chris Huron.
Okay,
Head Start is Mr. Reichard. CS Trust is Mrs. Cooper. CSIU is Dr. Gatachu. And CMAVTS is Mr. Clauser and John Kroll, with all remaining board members to serve as alternates. So even with the loss of Mr. Kroll, we had all remaining board members to serve as alternates. As to, since we have votes there, since if one person can't make it, anyone else can join.
okay, fair enough. The appointments that Terry just mentioned, is there anyone that does not want to serve in that position again for the upcoming year?
Again, let me, so I
Yeah, go
am
ahead.
in the finance committee.
Well, the committees,
Not yet,
I
we're
think,
not
are
there
the
yet.
appointment of the president.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, I believe, right?
Oh.
Right,
Okay.
right. Yeah, I just have them on, I had those first, that's why I started saying that like that.
All right. Let me simplify this. Let's do the committees first, and then we'll go through the other ones. I can do them by memory. All right, committees. Here's who I would like, and you were going to say something, Dr. Gatachu. I didn't mean to interrupt you. but-
You're going the same direction, so you go.
Okay, I think so. Academic affairs, which I believe we called curriculum. I have it as academic affairs. Ms. Heater, I'd ask that you chair that with Dr. Green and Dr. Gatachu.
So because of how things are changing in the way.
Yes. Go ahead.
I don't mind staying in the finance committee, but I don't want to go to too many, I don't want to commit that
Yeah.
I'm not going to fulfill. So
That's fine.
I would respectfully decline not to go into the curriculum committee for now.
Okay.
And I will.
Let me
stick with-
put this out there to you, Dr. Gatachi, and we'll
Yes.
see how you feel. And I took you off leading any committees because I knew of your situation. We had
Yes.
talked. Can I keep you on that? And if you're not able to make it, I'll be there?
Fair enough.
Is that okay?
That will fine.
Because
That
what
will
I
be-
did was with the committees, we put everybody on two. With
Okay.
the president on none.
Okay.
So I'd be the one that fills in if necessary, okay?
Yeah.
If that's all right.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. All right. Buildings and Grounds, that's Mr. Reichert again, Mr. Clauser, and Mr. Huron. Okay. Athletics, Ms. Cooper, Mr. Vognitz, Mr. Huron.
Oh, no.
Sorry. Terry, are you getting all these?
So, was Mr. Reichert chair of Building and Grounds?
Yes, the one I mentioned first.
CHA, and who was
Mr.
with
Clauser
Mr.
and
Huron?
Mr. Huron.
Okay.
Finance, I have Mr. Vognitz.
Chair?
Yes. Dr. Gatachu, Mrs. Cooper, and Mr. Reichert. We had 4 on that, I believe, last year.
Okay.
And negotiations, Dr. Green, Mr. Clauser, and Mrs. Heater. We get all 5 committees? That should be 16 people total with 8 board members, is 2 on each.
So I have Curriculum Committee, Building and Grounds, Finance, and Negotiations.
Athletics was Mrs. Cooper, Mr. Vognitz, and Mr. Huron. Cooper being the chair. You okay?
Yep.
All right. Thank you. All right. The other positions, these are the ones I was worried about that I don't have listed here. We need a representative of the VOTEC. Let's start with, let's just take a nomination. We'll work through it that way. We did have Mr. Clauser, correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Huron, were you there this year?
No, I did 2 years, the prior 2 years.
Who was our other rep? Do we have a second rep?
It was
John.
It
fall.
was,
John, okay.
I
So-
did fill in on an emergency basis, though. but-
Okay. Can we get a motion for a VOTEC rep? You're willing again? Can we get a motion for Mike?
I motion.
Motion for Mike to serve at VOTEC. Do we have any others that are possibly interested? And can we get a motion for that person? We really should have 2.
Yeah, we lose a vote
Yeah,
if we
it's,
don't have 2.
and we send a lot of money there and a lot of kids. So if we can get someone that would do it. Sherry, can we have a motion for Sherry?
Motion, Sherry.
Motion for Sherry. Any other motion or any other nominations for representative to the Columbia Montour VOTEC? Okay, we'll close the nominations. Any discussion? You don't have to do a roll call. We only have 2. All in favor of Mrs. Cooper and Mr. Clauser to be our representatives of the VOTEC signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
aye.
Terry, we have our representatives. Representative to the intermediate unit, Dr. Gatachu, you did this year, right?
CSIU?
Yeah. Do you want to do that again?
I can. So
You can do that?
because CSIU meetings are on the 3rd Wednesday. That will most likely work for me, so I'm willing to stay there.
You're okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Could we get a nomination of Dr. Gatachu?
Nominate Johannes for
Second.
CSA.
Okay. I think we're good with 1. Anybody else want to compete for the IU position? Okay, we only have 1 nominee. Any discussion? All in favor of Dr. Gatachu at the CSIU signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. CS Trust was actually me this year. I'm willing to go back again. I took it from Sherry. I'm glad to do it unless somebody else would like to have it. Can I get a motion to be approved at the CS Trust? Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Discussion? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I got the CS Trust, Terry.
You got it.
All right. What do we have left?
We have CS Trust, let me see.
EITC was Chris Huron this past year.
EITC.
Chris, you willing to do that again?
Bobby was took the lead on that too.
Okay.
I mean, I could do it if.
Okay. Wendy, you okay with helping out with that? Okay, can I get a nomination for Chris Huron?
Make a motion.
Nominated.
Okay. Anyone else? Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Chris is EITC. What else do we have?
Head Start.
Head Start.
Mr.
Durrell, you
Riker.
had this before?
I'll take it.
You're willing?
Yeah.
Nomination for Durrell?
Nominate.
Anyone want to compete for it? Discussion? All in favor? Signify by saying aye. Opposed? Got Durrell at the Head Start. What do we have? Anything else?
That's it.
Okay.
That's all I have on there.
Any more business?
No, we do have some other committees on here that you had discussed at one time, was the Policy Committee that only you were on,
Yeah, let's
And
leave
the-
that vacant for now.
and the Health and Wellness and Health Insurance. That was also, Dr. Green was the only person on those two.
Okay. Dr. Green, are you willing to serve in those roles again?
Actually build up to health and wellness.
Oh.
Dovetails well with the things that we talked about, and I'm happy to serve on the insurance.
Okay, and we'll develop it a little further when you're back here in person, but we'll at least try to get you appointed tonight. Any nomination for Dr. Green in those two positions?
Nominate.
Anyone want to compete for that? Comments, questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, Dr. Green's opposed. Do we have any more? Okay,
Nope, that's it.
motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Anyone opposed? We're adjourned.
All right.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, Dr. Green, thank
Thank
you.
you, Dr. Green.
Thank you.
you.
Enjoy.
Yes. That's up to you. We're about to carry all the votes, but it's up to you.
Have to leave in the
Okay,
middle.
sure, thank you. All right, Mr. Clauser has another obligation for the board that he's going to take care of. Okay, Terry, do we historically say the pledge again?
I didn't remember.
I
I don't
think
think
so.
we have to say the pledge again,
All
but
right, I
I
know
do
it's
think
on
we
here.
need to do another roll
We do
call now.
another roll call
Yep.
because Mr. Clauser's leaving.
Yes.
And Mr.
And
Green's
Dr. Green will be leaving also.
Yeah, Dr. Green is gone.
Okay, roll
Okay.
call vote.
Okay, so please give me 1 second to get to the next meeting. Mrs. Cooper.
Here.
Dr. Katachu.
Here.
Dr. Green. Mrs. Heater.
Here.
Mr. Huron.
Here.
Mr. Reichard.
Here.
Mr. Vognetz.
Here.
Mr. Clauser. Mr. Burkhart.
Here. One point three minutes from the November 14th, 2022 board meeting. The board will take action to approve the meeting minutes from the November 14th, 2022 board meeting as presented.
Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Any comments, questions, discussion? Terry, roll call on this?
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Katachu.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mr. Burkhart.
Yes. Board administrative announcements. Mr. Clauser just left the Columbia Montour Votech. I don't have any additional information, so we're going to move forward. CSIU, Dr. Katachu, do you have anything?
Yes, there was some advertisement there about a program called Yes to the Future. This targets students or youngsters who are between the ages of 16 and 24 who are not actively in any kind of education, that the CSIU can train to some level of skill that is free of charge, but they would end up having a skill. This is something that they promote every now and then. I think last time we posted on a Facebook or something, but I can work with Dr. Need in terms of how to reach the right audience. I'm not sure just speaking on a board may solve this. I think we need to find a way to reach out to this age group and this group of people that can benefit from this so that they can consider this.
Happy for us to connect and figure out how to do that.
EITC, Mr. Huron?
There's nothing.
Nothing?
to add.
Okay. Mr. Reichert, Head Start?
Okay, phone. Yes, at Head Start, they had a new policy. Council members were elected, and they started their positions in November. We currently have 2 high school students at Head Start as part of a co-op program. Mrs. Lewis's child development class of 14 students visit Head Start classroom on a weekly basis for hands-on experience working with young children. Geisinger's wellness program volunteered to teach our children about germs and the importance of good, I got there, hygiene. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Reichert. I have nothing on the CS Trust. Wendy, do you have anything? We okay? Yeah, they haven't met. They meet quarterly, every 3 months. All right, Superintendent's report.
There's no significant changes in enrollment. We can move just to things that I'm sharing this evening.
Dr. Need, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask you 2 questions about
Yes.
enrollment real quick, okay?
Yes.
I noticed, and I should have noticed before, we only have 18 students at Columbia Montour Votech in 9th grade this year. That seemed a little out of the ordinary. Is there anything that we should know that led to the drop? I know at times we're up to around 35.
So we have many local superintendents are in conversations right now about their enrollment procedures, have more students apply, and have had more rejections, I guess, than we have in the past, especially some students with some special education needs.
Okay.
So that, I would say, is a concern of local superintendents pressing with
So it's not just Danville?
It is not just Danville.
Yeah, I just thought that 18 really caught my eye. I know it's typically 30, 35.
And I know our guidance team is concerned about this and having ongoing conversations
All
about
right,
that.
that's fine.
Excuse me, Dr. Need, are you saying that across the board there's similarities to what we're experiencing?
Correct.
Not
That
a
there,
function of changes at Columbia Montour, it's just the nature of districts are.
I don't want to speak out of turn because it's, I'm on day 12, so still learning kind of the background information. But my understanding is that we're getting some candidates rejected that would have historically been accepted into their program, and other districts in our area are experiencing the same thing. So regional superintendents are in discussions with them about sort of what has changed in their selection process and how can we better work with them to get the students in that need to be there.
Anything else on that? It just caught me off guard. I usually don't look
That's
at it
fair.
that closely. And the other thing I noticed, and I tried to work the numbers to figure it out, the non-public, I think it's non-public. It's
Yes.
283 students. And I thought it was probably the St. Joe's and St. Cyril's, but that's not how the numbers look. Are they cyber kids or?
There would be some that are, but there's also some of the other Christian schools in the
Okay.
region.
That was
So
just
it's
a lot
any
more than I
Danville
anticipated.
student going out in the region.
I'm going to
I
ask
could
something.
get a breakdown of the specific schools for you.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask, I don't want people to have to do more work, but if we really,
No,
at
we
least
could do
once,
that.
get it broken out, I'm just
Yeah.
curious, because the numbers seem really high.
Yep.
Okay.
So Wayne, it's,
Thank you.
Mr. Burkhardt, is
Yeah.
there 283 non-public school students in there?
Yeah, I caught it
And-
last month and thought, all right, and started doing some math in my head. Then I did it again, looked at it in a little more detail. I thought, no, that's not what it is. It is really 283 kids that aren't here, that are not VOTEC kids, because that's public. They're not St. Cyril's kids. It doesn't look like they're not St. Joe's
We
kids.
have those broken out in the
So
report.
where are they? I guess that's what I'm asking. Where are they going? We're a district, and we're not the only ones. We have 2,800 kids, I think, that live here, but only about 2,200 go to school here. And because of a comprehensive OTEC, that drops the number, but that's a lot. That's a really significant amount that aren't going to school in Danville that live here. So I'd just like to know a little more.
Happy to bring that next time.
Okay, you go ahead. It's all yours.
No problem at all. We have kind of some sections, so to speak, to work through this evening. I want to share a little bit about some priorities for this next semester for the district. There's a little bit of data to add on to the data discussion we had last time. The board had posed just some information that they wanted to receive, especially with us not having committee of the whole, so just trying to provide some background information as you all will be making some decisions this evening. And then obviously want to just shout out some great things that are happening in our schools. So if you just look at the next slide, I shared this one last time, but just, so today is day 12 on the job, and I just like to thank the entire school district community for the welcoming nature in which they've invited me in. I have had time to be in all buildings, meet with groups of teachers, meet with administrators, and have been running around in a really good way, meeting with families and teachers and children. And a lot of amazing things are happening in Danville, and the people have been very honest in their communication and open, and I feel like I've really starting to get a good picture of the district and the great strengths we have and the needs we have. So I'm really appreciative of that. If you go to the next slide, I shared last time that we are in a cycle right now where we have to complete our comprehensive plan. But one of the things that we're also missing in the Danville School District right now is like a long-term or strategic plan. So we can really pair those tasks together. So my hope in this strategic planning process is that as a district, we will refine our mission and vision and values and what a portrait of a Danville grad is, and that we'll have a long-term plan for academics, a long-term plan for culture and communications, for mental health and social emotional development, for finance, and for facilities. So as we're making administrator goals and plans into the future, we can always be going back to that. So that's lurking further into the future as a long-term plan, but there are components of that the reality is, it is, I got to start this job mid-year, so you're like diving right in, and there's things that actually need to get done now. So some of those kind of spring, summer things within that process, if you will, if you go to the next slide. So when we're thinking about mission, right now our comprehensive planning committee, which is also our strategic planning committee, is working to redefine that mission, vision, values, and portrait of a grad. So that will be this winter, early spring kind of work that will be happening that we'll be bringing to the board to look at. If you look at the next slide, when we're thinking about academics, some things that will be happening kind of just right away in this next semester is we need to be looking at our current curricular needs with a redefined design process and use of data in that process. And happy to see Mr. Moser here and excited he'll be joining the team, but really kind of prioritizing those curricular needs based on the data that we've been looking at as a district. We do need to examine pathways and see if there's any edits that need to happen since we have 9th graders in that process and 8th graders coming into that. So we'll be presenting to the board kind of this winter, early spring at the latest, a plan there. And I'd like to examine our transition, so thinking about it kind of pairs with pathways. How are we helping our 5th graders transition to 6th grade and understand the offerings there that are preparing them? And how are we transitioning our 8th graders to 9th grade and the scheduling processes that go along? So I kind of pluck that out, if you will, in terms of long-term strategic planning to say these are things that need to start happening now, if that makes sense. So just wanted folks to be aware of that. If you go to the next screen, in terms of culture and communications, the administrators have done a great job starting a district communications plan, and that's something we need to kind of push out to the implementation phase this spring. So what are those internal and external processes, as well as improvements to our webpage to make all that information more readily accessible to families? If you look to the next one, when we're thinking about mental health and social emotional learning, We have formed a mental health task force, and our first meeting will be on December 14th at 6:30 in the high school LGI. That group will be starting to look at our specific objectives, and I'd like to come back to the board in January with an update as to where we are. But some of those things that we'll be wanting to look at is what does our SEL curriculum look like? What are improvements we should be making to our school-wide discipline plans? What kind of parental support can we be providing? What kind of improved communication resources? And then we need to be looking at our internal interventions for students and looking at community intervention partnerships. So the committee will be going in that direction, and I'm just super thankful. So just would like to thank Mrs. Heater and Dr. Green for their willingness as board members to participate in that work. We have lots of teachers and administrators who are interested, as well as community members and parents, so really thankful for that group. We're also working right now through some generous donations and fundraisers with our SPM group to schedule Daniel Patterson to come to the district on April 5th and 6th to do a session with students, with parents, and with teachers. So thankful for that. So those are some of the just right away happenings within mental health and social emotional learning. If you go to the next slide, some things that we need to do immediately with finance would be we need to have an effective budget process as we plan out our 23-24 school year. And then we need to start looking at some improvements to the district's financial procedures to really outline what this process looks like moving forward. Within facilities, we need to get our Liberty Valley construction project complete, and we would start a long-term facilities maintenance process where we're really documenting what that looks like, so assessing where each of our buildings and our facilities currently are. So, and this marries with our finance plans that we're properly budgeting for the needs that our facilities would have into the future. So I'd like to get that process started, probably not complete, but started this spring. Next slide. Some things in terms of athletics and other extracurriculars that we need to be bringing to the board this spring are we need to be looking at revisions to our athletic guidelines, including our coaches' code of conduct. We need to be looking at a coaching and advising matrix so that when we bring kind of those names and salaries to the board, we have a consistent way in which we're doing that, and an examination of like length and type of coaching contracts so that we also have consistency there. So those would be priorities in terms of athletics for the spring. We do have a negotiating committee, and we do have those 2 upcoming contracts, so that'll also be some time and energy this spring. And then next slide. So we have a little bit of a transition there. I'm just kind of hitting a lot of topics tonight, so I appreciate your patience. So since our last meeting, I shared PSSA data at the last time. So since that time, we've gotten access to what's called our PVOS data, or our Pennsylvania Value Added Assessment System. If you want to go to the next screen, when we're thinking about value added, we're thinking about measuring student growth. So this is different than saying this many students are advanced or this many students are proficient and measuring like that, and is instead saying what PVOS does is it takes a student's assessment history and it predicts where they should score. So where a 4th grader should score in ELA, and then it would measure, are we growing above where they should score? Are we growing kind of right where they predicted they'd score? Or are we growing students less than predicted? We obviously would like, as a district, to be in the place where we're growing at least as much as predicted, if not more. So when I talked about Mr. Moser and I and the admin team working on looking at spots in the curriculum where we'd want to start first and looking at data, we would want to look at that PSSA data, but we'd also want to turn to the PVOS data. So this would be overview data. We do have access to drill down even further and look at cohorts of students, specific teachers, those kind of things. But I just wanted to share general data publicly. So if you go to the next screen, you'll see that this is PSSA math, and this is from the 2022 year. You see 4th through 8th grade. You do not get a PVOS score in 3rd grade because they don't have data to predict growth from, if that makes sense, because third grade is the first time they take the test. So they use that third grade data to make future predictions. And so they make predictions for where they want students to grow. You'll see student count. So essentially, we'd love to be in blue as a district. Green would mean we're growing as predicted. And then going down into yellow and red would mean that we're growing students less than was predicted by PVOS. So that's where we sit in math. When you pair that with the PSSA data that we saw in terms of actual advanced, proficient, basic, below basic, you see some trends, I guess, if that makes sense. So I think there's clear data to help support some directions that we need to take as a district. If you go to the next screen, you'll see the same for English language arts. So again, you see that 4th through 8th grade. So when we're seeing in blue, we're saying those students performed well above where they were expected. Again, we're hoping to be in that green through blue area as a district. If you go to the next screen, you'll see science. Science just has those 2 years of measurement, and again, the same color coding. So just wanted to share that data. We didn't have that ready the last time. And then our final data to look at would be our Keystone data. And so certainly, again, we know that our high school scored very well this year. So congratulations on that data there. But I certainly applaud Jeremy. There's already conversations. I think, like when I was saying you could drill down, students get divided into quintiles. So you can actually see like the highest quintile, for example, we're growing, but maybe not at the rate that we could grow. So even in places where the data looks really beautiful, we can start having conversations with teachers about groups of students and how to reach them. So those kind of conversations are happening and will continue to happen. All right, we'll transition now to, I just have some information that I wanted to share. Some is just an answer to questions that I've received from board members, and some will provide some background information for an upcoming discussion that's on the board agenda. So I'm actually really excited about this and was able to add an option today, so I hope you all are excited too. So it's been discussed that there's a group of students at the middle school right now who currently walk, who are only walkers. And although there is technically a safe path for them to walk, and it's less than, like they're legally allowed to walk that distance, we know some of those students are perhaps choosing dangerous ways in which to get to school. So originally the 3 options were to make a new bus route. A new bus route has a minimum of $37,544. That's the minimum. There was an option to attach them to another run, but it would delay a bus arriving at the high school by 15 minutes, or an option to wait and get that in the budget for next year. I've been working with Laura Reno. She's amazing. So public shout out to Laura, who works in our transportation. And she worked through this creative solution. So bus 64 goes to the middle school in the morning to pick up some students to take them to the primary school. So the middle school students would never be on the bus with the primary school students, but it would just be a creative use of a primary school route. So students in those specific students could be picked up by bus 64, taken to the middle school, dropped off there, and then the students that pick up the bus at 64 could pick it up and be taken to the primary school. On the way home, bus 56 could be their way home. That is a bus that currently just does a primary school in Liberty Valley run, but we could sort of double run this short run on that bus. So Laura was working with bus contractors. There would be some cost to that. Her guess was approximately $2,000 because that bus is now on the road longer, but not as pricey as a whole nother bus run. So there is an option later for discussion and vote, but feeling like that feels like a good option, and we could look at those numbers again when that comes up. Happy for questions now.
Questions on the busing situation, comments?
Dare I comment?
I think you can. We haven't voted on anything. There's nothing, I don't
Okay,
think, that would stop you
option
from that.
Option number one, we ran over ourselves today a couple times, and option number one should work perfectly fine, because 56 does go to schools, does go to primary and does Liberty Valley both, even though you
Right.
said one, it goes to two.
I'm sorry, I thought I said both, yeah.
No, that's okay, I'm listening, don't worry.
No, you're on it.
But that option should work fine. We've talked about it just before I come up here, matter of fact, my son and I talked
Option
about
one.
this.
Yeah.
And should work out perfectly fine.
Okay. No, it's,
Because the second option up there, to put another bus on for 37,540, good, I'll take it, but I can't drive it. Anybody
money,
drives.
yeah, it's
That's the
expensive.
next problem.
Yeah, I was gonna say that actually isn't a problem we could solve tomorrow because we don't have a driver.
Well, I can drive it, but I don't want to.
But
I'm
number
only
one
spare.
number one doesn't create any delays for
No,
kids
doesn't
now.
create nothing, because
'cause-
you start 10 minutes earlier.
Yeah.
Get them, get to their own destination on time. Same way in reverse procedure, she can start 10 minutes early, put them where they belong, and go to where she belongs. It's not a
Yeah.
problem.
Right.
That's what I didn't like about the first option 4. There's 2 option 4s, it looks like. My
Oh,
eyes aren't
sorry.
that good.
I added the one at the last minute, so I missed my 3.
All right. Action 4 or 4A or whatever, that one
Well,
bothered.
option 4 is bad news.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, no, I am just really thankful to Durrell. Also, just shout out to all of our bus contractors for the great work they did on our early dismissal this week. So, really appreciate that. But I think option 1 is a
Pretty easy.
good option. I don't know, it can't like start tomorrow,
No.
but Laura could work with those families to get, and, you know,
Probably get it
Mr.
started.
Reichard.
Yeah, we
If you
will.
don't get it started by the end of the year, we can get it started first thing of the year. at
First
least.
thing in January for sure. We can
Okay.
get that started.
All right.
If that's the direction. And again, there'll
I've
be a
already
voting
talked
item,
to 2 of my
but
bus drivers, and one's on board on 100%, and the other, and I'll tell he's on board. He likes it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, you won't be able to vote on it, I don't believe, but we could certainly, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. That's actually up to the solicitor, but,
there's a
Yeah,
place that
that's-
we can turn
okay,
it into an
good
action
enough.
item. I'm just kind of trying to provide
Okay.
background information for your discussion, I guess, if that makes sense.
do we have any other questions, comments, discussion on this? Again, this is there are 39 kids that don't have a bus. You mentioned that they're within the legal distance, but the thing we talked about is the hazardous
The
route
danger, right.
going across Route
Yeah,
54.
we had set up 3 locations to pick them up.
Yeah,
I think one's at the gym there, like on East Market Street. One's down at the street going down Ferry, and then down at Oips is the last one. I forget the second one.
right. Anything else on this? Okay, we're gonna hold this and decide what we want to do before we adjourn tonight. Jen, is that okay?
I would say it's under transportation. There's
Okay,
like a
so that's where we
possible
would go with
action
that?
on
Yep.
this.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on, we'll hold that one. 13, when we
Okay.
get to that point, then we'll discuss whether we want to actually make it a voting
Great.
item tonight. And this is probably the appropriate time to announce that we had an executive session tonight,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Personnel issues, student issues, started at 6:30 and adjourned right at the time that we started our meeting at 7. Okay,
Then I have some athletic updates and some that I'm working on for next time because I know there have been some sort of unresolved athletic things. So the first one is just kind of where I am up to speed right now with where we are with our track. So we had a warranty with Nagel Athletic Services that ended on October 4th. We did have and I've shared the documents that are linked there. I've shared with the board and the communications that I sent. Conducted an inspection on October 5th and recommended that the track should be cleaned and relined, but otherwise should not need resurfacing for another 4 to 5 years. So then they provided a quote with prices that are subject to change based on when we would, we currently have not voted to approve this, is my best understanding. So there's a price for washing, for restriping, and if we did both, there are a few small pits that they said that they could also repair during that cleaning. And then if you look at the next slide, the company has presented essentially evidence of what cleaning and restriping would do for the track. So that would be their recommendation for the track at this point.
Now, is the repair costs for the pits included in that cost, or is that additional cost?
That would be an additional cost, is my understanding, but Ken felt like it would be minor, but I don't have the numbers on that at this point in time. He felt like the larger cost would be the cleaning and restriping.
And warranty is expired now, right?
Correct.
Nothing is under warranty? Okay.
That expired in October.
Anything else we should know about this at this point?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'm certainly happy to find out more information as well.
Okay.
There wasn't an extended warranty available at the time of it expiring? No one knew about, or maybe there
Not that I'm aware of. It did end on October 4th, so that was, prior to
Usually
my coming on.
people
But
offer you so much money for so much more time, and
Okay. And we're looking at a new director of buildings and grounds relatively soon.
Correct.
So, another set of eyes maybe.
I
Nothing
think-
against Ken, but
no,
we've had a lot
I
of
think that
questions.
this work really probably can't be done until early spring based on weather. So I think a sort of good next step, if I were suggesting, would be to get a new buildings and grounds person hired, which we'll be interviewing for that at the end of this month and hope to bring a name to the January meeting, and do a full tour again of the track with that company again. And again, I know Mr. Brandt was a part of that, so bringing out some of our athletic staff that use the track and giving whoever's new to that role a full assessment of what's going on.
Okay.
And then we could bring an actual action item that says spend this much money, you know what I mean, to repair the track, if that makes sense. That's the direction I would go.
Okay.
The next item is scheduling of events. So we have a parking issue at the primary school and the high school where we do have limited parking and need to work together. There was a specific event at Trunk or Treat Night, and I believe it was a soccer playoff game where we were extra packed. So kind of two things when it comes to scheduling of events. First, we do have an athletic calendar where the events were like large building events that would require parking spots are placed, so the athletic director is aware of that. So Amy and her team for Trunk or Treat did have Trunk or Treat on that calendar. Our athletic director, Mr. Albertson, has apologized for this oversight. I think he wasn't quite aware the extent of what Trunk or Treat means and how the entire town shows up for Trunk or Treat. So it was on the calendar, so there is a system there. It was just kind of maybe a misunderstanding of how big of a deal Trunk or Treat is. Also, the activity Trunk or Treat actually requires the parking lot as opposed to being in the building, so that automatically takes all the primary school spots. So I do think we have a system within this athletics calendar, and that was just a particular oversight. So certainly apologize to any community members that were parking in random places that evening. So while I think that system is working decently well, today in administrative meeting we started talking about just facility reservation in general and what that looks like for the parking lot, and I do think that there's some work to be done on that process, so it is something we're aware of for sure. Any thoughts there before we move on?
Well, I did want to say one thing. With the committee structure, going back to what it was, there are some things obviously that could go right to them and they
Yes.
could start to dig in a little deeper. And I also wanted to add something too, as things come across my mind. We hosted a lot of playoff games this year.
We did.
Just really wanted to express the appreciation to people that have been here and taken the time, because I've always liked that. The Danville's a destination point for playoff games, whether it be soccer or football. I don't know if we got as much football as we have in the past, but we have in the past, definitely. And basketball, it makes the district look good, but I don't think we can forget that it's time. People have to come in. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, a lot of organizations. So I just want to express appreciation for all involved.
I would agree. Thank you. So talking about the future land across from the primary school, Jennifer, you might be able to speak about the November court hearing date. All went well from my understanding as scheduled.
Yeah, and there was an interesting point, and I'm happy to update the board, but in short, we're on track to get the deed. I was actually conversing with the borough's attorney earlier today. He's going to be sending me the proposed deed, and we're going to be touching base, so we're on track.
And so the closing would be scheduled for January 13th. And Ken and Jennifer and I did meet with K&W engineers. So the board had previously approved for them to conduct the permitting process. That will take approximately 6 months, and they can begin that process as soon as that closing happened. So they're prepared to do that. And now that's sort of the last point of official board approval, if you will. So they've done some design work, but we've not committed the 1.5 million, but they did design work under the guidance of, the board in the past to look at what that space could look like. Their original design work includes stormwater work, a parking lot, a baseball field, and a soccer field. And if you go to the next slide, this would be sort of their initial drawing, with the right being kind of across from the primary school, like that road there. Oh, I'm sorry, the front would be State Hospital Drive, excuse me. And so you drive along State Hospital Drive and turn into additional parking there with a baseball field, a soccer field, and then you see kind of in just black and white where future things could be. No funding has been officially committed to this yet, so I think this is a place where we need to have future discussions about how we'd want to use this land. Kind of connected to our scheduling of events problem, even moving forward with a gravel lot or something like that could be a good first step just because of our parking issue in general.
Yeah, and as we go through discussions about within our new committees, this all works together.
Yes.
That's one of the dangers of having committees meeting separately. We really need to do everything together. We know we have some budgetary
Yes.
challenges. We know how we have that. We have a prior study by the architect, which was a good study, but don't forget 1.5 million in 2020 numbers is not the same as 2023 numbers.
No, it's not.
Those prices have increased significantly, I'm sure, at this point. So go ahead.
So I just wanted to update there. The next update within athletics would be where we are in terms of whether or not volleyball would be added as a sport. So there was an interest survey given to high school students and to 8th graders, both boys and girls, and there was considerable interest, enough that could field a team. I don't know if you say field in volleyball. Sorry, I'm not naive to volleyball, I guess. But interest surveys were completed. One concern, so shout out to Mr. Albertson, great detail in those surveys. He did ask people about other sports they're currently participating in, because one thing we'd want to consider is the effect it could have on other sports. So one concern that would be highlighted in the data would be that we could lose girls to other fall sports. So in the fall, we do already have 4 options for girls with girls soccer, field hockey, tennis, and cross country. And those sports do have established leagues. So some financials, we need to look deeper if, the board wants us to move in that direction. But if these prices are for if we would have a boys team and a girls team, they could be mostly cut in half if we went only to a girls team, except for equipment would be all of those costs just minus boys' uniforms, because we'd still need the nets, the balls, all of those things. So you can see those, and those coaching numbers are assuming first-year coaches, so kind of lower end of that salary schedule, I guess, if you will. So those are our numbers for coaches, equipment, officials, travel, event workers. One quote we need if we want to become more serious about this is what striping and resurfacing of the gym floor, as well as the cost for post holes in the floor. We do have ways to set up volleyball right now for gym class volleyball, but it's not necessarily the same requirements as if we were doing volleyball as a sport. So there would have to be actual adjustments to the gym floor made.
Any comments about volleyball? I'm going to, but if there's anyone else that has something to say. I think I'm the one that initiated this actually in 2018, and it didn't move, and I'm bringing it up again. Just a couple things I think are important to note. I understand the impact it could have on other sports. I think that should be driven by student interest, not adult convenience and
Sure.
preconceived notions of what we should and shouldn't have. The PIAA recognizes 12 girls' sports that have inter-district competition. We have 11 of them. We don't have volleyball. That's the only one. The other thing is, I believe of those 12 sports, the one with the most schools is girls basketball, then track, and the third one is girls volleyball. There's over 600 high schools in Pennsylvania with girls volleyball out of a little over 700. So almost everybody has it except this area. Not just us, but this area. And it is growing rapidly, and I believe, and I haven't confirmed this, and I'm not doing this to go opposite of what Mr. Albertson said, because I don't know that my data is right. I think we would be the school that would give the Heartland a division or a section.
Okay.
Mr. Wynn, what do they call it? The Heartland.
A division,
I think we're the sixth, because I know there's a couple up in Lycoming County. I think Central Mountain has it. I know Shamokin has it. They've had it forever. It's really big down in the southern, the coal regions area, and we would be sixth. So there would be a division, and we would get those 10 games initially. And I'm pretty certain there's another school or two that are looking at it. So I do think it's growing rapidly. Over 80% of the high schools in Pennsylvania have the sport. We have 11 out of 12. I understand we have some budgetary challenges. I've been looking more on the girls' side, but I'd be willing to look at both. And, a little bit of a personal aside, I was at Berwick, and I just saw volleyball take off up there. Girls are playing in college. The community loves it. They're actually packing the gym for girls' volleyball games, which is neat. So I've seen how popular the sport can be. So I really would be disappointed if we just kind of dismissed it out of hand, because it could impact sports where we really don't have great participation. I think that should be driven by the kids. If something goes away because volleyball comes, well, then maybe that sport's not as strong enough that we should be maintaining it anyway. That's my feeling, and I think at that point, if anybody else has any questions, comments, we're certainly open to them, but it is something the committee should be taking a look at.
I'm very happy to get, I'm a pro-female sports person, so I hear you on that for sure. I'd be very happy for us to work on that quote, and then we could bring this information back to the athletics committee and move to a motion at some point about that. Then we'd have the actual facts. And I don't think that in saying that Mr. Albertson was saying we shouldn't. He was just providing that data for full awareness.
And I've heard a lot of girls that graduated. My own daughter was one of them, and she's graduated now. That said, "Boy, if they had volleyball, I really would have loved to have played it." I know how popular it becomes when you do have it as a sport. I've been in districts that had it and seen not just Berwick, but other ones as well. So I hope it's something we take real seriously. I know the challenges, but I think they're surmountable.
So is there a numbers issue? Why is this emphasis on this, just the girls' volleyball? How about boys?
A lot of schools start girls volleyball and not boys because of Title IX, because of participation. It'll bring their girls' participation up and equalize things a bit. I don't think that's a big issue here from what I've seen. I think our participation's pretty equal. I'm not positive of that. The interest survey, I noticed that it seemed to lean more toward the girls, though, but there are some boys I saw that were interested, too. I didn't look at that much detail at the boys. I'm going to leave that with the administration and then through the committee. I was really pushing more into girls because I do believe in the Heartland it's almost all girls teams right now. I think. I'm not positive of that. Mr. Wynn, do you?
I think that's true.
Yeah, okay. So that would be another challenge. There just aren't a lot of boys
Scheduling,
teams
right.
around right now. But there are girls teams. It's growing.
And travel is based on lacrosse, just because there might be a little more travel initially. But hopefully as more schools would add this regionally, that decreases
And when is the seasons?
in the fall for
Fall.
girls. That's
So
why I was
it'll
just
be for
mentioning
next
those
year.
fall sports. Boys would be spring if we did boys volleyball.
And all the information I brought out, PIAA website, it's all there on all the schools that have it and the other things that I mentioned.
We had a question about a record banner for indoor track in the gymnasium. So at this point, the reason that we don't have, this is just providing information. The reason that we don't have one right now is because it's a club sport and there's not like a PIAA championship connected to winter track. So we could certainly begin to recognize club sports, but I would just throw out there that we may want to look at recognizing all club sports in that manner. So like cheerleading, mountain biking, lacrosse. And there's not a large expense, but just for price sake, banners run approximately $150 to $400, and we may just need to look at some gym space reorganizing and some maybe hanging costs because we're all full up, if you will, which is great for Danville sports that we have so many championships and the gym is so full. but was just asked about the existence of that and why or why not that decision was made. It's the PIAA sports where you can have like a district championship, a state championship in that sport that are currently recognized in the gym. And another athletic update, if you go to the next slide, is around coaches' code of conduct. So what I've shared with board members is that we do have an athletic guidelines and procedures manual, but with Mr. Albertson new in his role, he has some adjustments. He's been doing some coach observations, made some changes to our evaluation, all that I think are really positive. And then there's also our current coach code of conduct, which was updated in November of last year. There was some discussion around whether or not this should be board policy or not. So I did do some research around board policy in this area. And there are only 2 school districts in the state of Pennsylvania right now that have a coach's I don't want to say everyone. I don't know for sure. But I would imagine everyone has a code of conduct. Just whether or not it's policy. So there are only 2 with policy, and I have shared that information with the board members in terms of what that language looks like. My suggestion here as we move into having athletic committee would be really that the athletic committee could work with Mr. Albertson and myself and Mr. Moser when he comes on board, and Mr. Wing could be part of those discussions, and we'd really examine that guidelines and procedures manual and look at our coach's code of conduct and make those things that we present to the board and get board approval on. I think that would be the appropriate next step, but that's on your agenda for discussion.
Mr. Wagner has been pushing for having this as a policy that the board will have a direct oversight. So are you suggesting that's what you want to go for, or I kind of
My
missed that.
suggestion would be to go with an updated manual and a code of conduct, but write the code of conduct with enough teeth in it, so to speak, that you can hold people accountable there, but not go to the policy level since there's not a lot of precedent for that. But I do think in reworking those things, we'd have ways to hold people accountable. But I will obviously follow the board's direction on that.
Yeah, and that was suggested by our interim superintendent to make it board policy. So we
Right.
do have more bite to it.
And I think that could even come through discussions with folks on the athletics committee and then like on our team that are working in that area to work together on both of those things and say, does this have enough weight without policy? Should we bring that to policy and present the board with sort of updated versions of those?
Right.
I strongly suggest that has a lot more teeth than it has now, because majority of our complaints are from pertain to athletics, and by far the majority of the complaints in athletics relate to coaches. And also I have personal experience, and a lot of parents, including last time or the month before, there were a couple of mothers that came and complained about the same thing. So I think it's due that we really hold coaches to a much higher standard than we do now.
I think I want to add into this conversation. I think we got to be real careful what you write down and say we're going to hold people to. Because if you even start to explore some of the items on here and you start talking about coaches have to be dressed a certain way and you're going to start building something that's subjective, it's not going to solve that problem. So I just caution. I think the right tact is to have some further discussion with all folks at the table, board team, athletic director, and other members. But if I don't know where we're going to go with this, but when I read this coach's code of conduct, this opens up more questions than it does, I think, resolve any real issues. So I think we have to be careful of how we conduct this, because I could also see from my personal experiences that parents that have a personal grievance because their child may not get what they view as, like, say, adequate playing time, they're going to start leveraging some things we could put in here, and you're going to open up a whole can of worms. And so I think we have to be sensitive to chain of command and standing true to all layers of chain of command and work through the process. I don't think a coach's code of conduct's a bad idea, but I think we have to be really careful that we're not trying to solve one problem with a written word, and then we're going to just create more problems than it's intended to solve.
I agree, but I think the devil is in the details. So it's not, I'm not going to shy away from pursuing this, to be honest, simply because I feel like there's some egregious behaviors that I saw in the coaches, and I feel like that needs to be addressed somehow. But also, I don't want to make that, I mean, if you talk about playing time, I don't want to go into details, to be honest. We'll have an athletic committee, we're going to go into those details. But, you know, I don't think this is, I think this is only the beginning of what we need to do. But I think we need to address this. We need to be a school of the future that has the emphasis on the students' mental and all kinds of attitude in it when it comes to how we do things. We need to be moving forward.
And I agree, and I'm not trying to discount what you're saying, Dr. Gattaccio. I'm also saying from personal experience that if you're going to build one of these, you better be ready to enforce those with some direction. You can't just put a list of things and say, this is what we expect. Have them be subjective and say, okay, I feel item 2 and 3 were violated. I don't agree with you. We start this whole, we just have to be really tactful with this one. Because there's in this realm, from personal experience, there's some strong opinions that don't always align. And so I'm up for a conversation, be happy to have a seat at that table, but I can speak very constructively to a lot of different views on this, and I'm just going to caution us as a group to be careful, very careful when we start doing stuff like this, because on the upside, might solve a problem. The downside, are we ready to enforce the letter of this thing to some level? And that's part of that discussion too.
Absolutely agree.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you,
sorry.
Mr. Huron. Go ahead.
And then a couple other athletic updates. So there was some discussion about selling advertisements on the football field to help us with finances. I certainly think that that's a good direction that we could go in. I've not in 12 days made movement on that, and even just want to clarify sort of why. So again, think that it's a great idea. I want us to be thoughtful about our businesses in our community, and we do have asks from like a lot of our boosters, yearbook, drama. I know a lot of our local business are on the foundation of the local Chamber of Commerce and do a lot of good work for us that way. So I'd just like to put some thought into what is our ask of our community businesses in general. So this is like one part of that package, I guess, if you will, so that when we're going to local businesses, we're really thoughtful about all of the needs. And I would hate for us selling advertisements to stop the play from being supported or whatever that case is, so that we can be thoughtful when we go to a business to say, here are the different ways in which you can support the Danville School District. And then the final one, sorry if you can go back, Jeff, is I was asked about an update to the swim team record board. And interestingly, I've been on sort of the receiving end of some of this information in my previous role at the DAC too, with the pool being there. But just some, I guess, frustrations, but information. So swim team representatives last spring found a PA-based company with kind of the samples they wanted for what they wanted a swim team record board to look like, where you could more easily change out the records, because we had students kind of breaking records every single meet, and it was like a permanent record board that would need to be fixed. So this new one would have sliding numbers and letters, so you could just constantly update the records. So it was selected that we go with a company called All Star Record Boards. Payment was made in August. There's our payment. The decision was made to go with payment in full because you got a 10% discount. Again, that's my best understanding. So the plastic letter tracks have been back ordered multiple times because of supply chain issues. They are now physically in Canada, I believe actually now since I wrote that, physically here in Pennsylvania. So they've made it through customs. The company's informing us that the worst case scenario is the board would be installed between Christmas and New Year's. Mr. Albertson has let them know that our first home swim meet is on December 20th, and we just really like to meet that December 20th date. So they are very aware of that and are working towards the December 20th date. And then my last one that I don't have up here, but there is a question about coaches' contracts and 1 year versus 3 year on coaches' contracts. So that's something, if you recall, when I was talking about sort of plans for the spring, that I think we need to present a consistent way to do that. But my best understanding on history there is that we almost exclusively start with 1 year contracts for coaches, but we've then moved to 3 year for coaches with more significant experience and continued 1 year to 1 year with newer coaches. That's just my understanding of how we've gotten to where we are now.
I think that needs discussion with everybody. Personally, as long as there's a standard.
Right.
If it's 3 years of satisfactory evaluations or 5 years, then we offer you an extended contract. I personally am okay
Right.
with that. I just want to know how we're making the decisions, that's all.
Yeah, I think we need to, come to the board before we're doing coaches' contracts for next year and have a clear matrix, and also this is the way you all, for example, and I wouldn't unilaterally make this decision, but we start with 1 year contracts. Once you've had so many years of a successful evaluation as a coach, you can move up to the 3 year contract, or you have this many years of experience, and we just have clear guidelines.
As long as it's standard and everybody's playing by the same set of rules.
Right. So I think it's been semi-standard, but maybe not written out at the level it should.
Okay.
And then my last thing is just some highlights from the district. So I'll turn it over to our principals to share, and we'll start with our high school. And Mr. Wynn, I think you have 2 screens. There's so many good things happening.
Dr. Mead, could I
Oh, yes, I'm
digress
sorry.
just for a half a
Of
moment? One thought I
course.
just wanted to not beat it up here. When we entertain the concept of advertisements, I think that's a wonderful idea. I do think as we enter into that realm, we've got to be hypersensitive that we create the standards that we want.
Absolutely,
Because
I agree.
I've seen dominant signs in places, some that are decayed. So if we're going to live up to a standard, I think we really got to step out of that box with very clear perspective, and not only establish on the front end, but how we're going to manage it over time. I think that's paramount to making that a real valuable thing for this school.
I agree. Going back to what Mr. Burkhart shared about being proud that we have so many playoff games here and that our stadium is really seen as one of the top facilities in the region, we would not want the quality of that to go down by doing that. So I completely agree. Thank you.
Making somebody accountable or putting a team together to create those standards and maintain them.
I agree for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at the high school. So recently they had district band and district orchestra competitions, and you can see the list of students up there. We're really excited and really proud of our students. Some of those students you've seen for multiple years. So again, congratulations to those people. Brenna Ross was also named to the National Association for Music Education All-Eastern Honors Band, and Sarah Sharp was named to the National Association for Music Education All-Eastern Honors Choir. So again, congratulations to all those folks. Mr. Pegg, who is our high school government teacher, has arranged for Representative Culver, potentially Senator Culver, to visit his government classes on December 20th. And Mr. Pegg also, with a large group of our 10th grade students, is going to Philadelphia. A lot of donations, and I'm sure they'll be sending out thank yous from our local VFW and other groups. Rich, I think some of your associations were part of those donations.
The Legion donated.
The
and
Legion,
the Sons
yes.
of the Legion.
So that they will be sending thank yous to those groups. So again, thank you for that.
And next slide, yep.
Our Veterans Club, you can see a lot of cookies there. They, I forget exactly the number of cookies, but there were hundreds of cookies. So the veterans were donating cookies to our local nursing homes. And then December 17th is Wreaths Across America, and members of the club will be placing wreaths on veterans' graves. And I also want to mention one other group that's not there. I know our drama department started, and our forensics started their play preparations, and I believe our new drama lead person has picked all the parts for the students, and I know they're very excited. I saw them there again practicing, and again our forensics group is practicing and getting prepared. I believe they're Mr. Varholik, is it this weekend for forensics? So they'll be doing their play this weekend.
Thank you so much. We have information about the middle school, and then I've got some pictures following it there, Dave.
All right. So at the middle school, we had groups of our 6th and 7th grade social studies classes. They created actually over 200 cards for our veterans that were distributed to them. The student council hosted a Veterans Day breakfast. It was originally scheduled for November 11th and was rescheduled for I think the following Friday after that. We had a very good turnout. Veterans, they came in, they had a nice breakfast, they met with our student council representatives, and everyone had a really nice time at that event. Our 8th grade students worked on underwater robots in their STEM class, and there's some pictures of that, I believe. And then our PE students are participating, had their archery unit, and they follow the National Archery in Schools program. And there are the pictures. That bottom picture is at least the majority of the veterans and students that were involved in that program. There at the top left is our archery PE classes. Middle there is the students that are making the cards in social studies class. Then a couple more pictures from our Veterans Day activity.
You. And at Liberty Valley on the next screen, the Girls on the Run group completed a 5K at the Miller Center, which is the culminating Girls on the Run experience for the region of Girls on the Run. So I've gotten to participate in that as a mom, and it's a wonderful experience. And it's just such an empowering program for our young girls. So thankful to the leaders that do that at Liberty Valley. The 5th grade level celebrated Colonial Day, and they went to the Mooresburg one-room school. They were dressed in costumes, making homemade butter. I got to visit Liberty Valley that day, and there were some great outfits. And so we had some parents participating and coming in costume. So fun day. The AV Club students are taking full responsibility for the morning news and announcements. I got to be on the morning news when I was visiting Liberty Valley, and those students run the show. So middle school and high school, you're ready for future AV Club students. They're writing the scripts for this. They're the on-air talent. They're directing it. They do a great job. So if board members, if you end up at Liberty Valley, you may want to come in the early morning and see the news sometime. And then if you go to the next screen, that's just a picture. There they are presenting the news. We've got some girls running, and then they're in the one-room schoolhouse there. And then we'll transition to the primary school. And Mrs. Willoughby, I've got some information and then some pictures on the next one.
So we had our second Kids Run the Nation race, which was awesome. Families came out to cheer our students on. It was very successful. A little different from last year. We didn't run the track. We actually ran the cross-country course, and I shouldn't say we because I did not run. I did cheer, so that was a success. We also had some first grade teachers put together a very fun literacy project, and they did the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Literacy Parade, where they decorated their desks and they talked about some writings that they've done or books that they have read, and 4 classrooms participated in that. And we had some board members come, so thank you to those of you who were able to participate, and we had families come out as well. We also had Friendsgiving celebrations, which is just a fun classroom activity. I don't think we have pictures from that, but most grade levels did that, and families and friends came to enjoy some treats in classrooms. And finally, the sharing stew that kindergarten does, it was lovely. They all take a part in preparing the stew that they eat, but they also made homemade butter and different items. And there they all are, sitting in the hallway, enjoying their stew together. That is our kindergarten hallway. All classes participated. And then, of course, our Kids Run the Nation students, and there are 2 individuals from the Macy's Day activity.
Thank you so much. And then, Linda, some Head Start pictures.
So I just want to. So I just wanted to send some pictures of our kids learning and what they do in Head Start. So at 3 and 4, children learn best through play. So you see a lot of kids playing. You see them learning writing there on the left and learning to use or holding a pencil. On the top right is Geisinger coming and teaching us germ busters and how to hand wash and have for better hygiene. At the bottom, you see cooking activity going on. It's a science activity where the kids really participate in cooking and measuring and taking the ingredients and then baking them. And they made pretzels, they make bread. It's just a really neat experience for them.
Thank you. That's all I have. So thank you so much and your patience as I transitioned from topic to topic.
Thank you. Any comments before we move on? Okay. Do we have any public comment on agenda items only? Okay, we'll move on. School and 6.1, school and property supplies consent items. The board will take action to approve items 6.2, 6.3, 6.4. Are we okay to move with that? Anyone want anything pulled out? Okay, motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Any comments, questions, discussion? Ready for a vote?
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes, I overlooked something, but I'm yes. 6.4, the proceeds from the speakers will be allocated to the DMS Outdoor Improvement Project. I think that's a great idea. Do we actually approve that at some point? Or do we just have a presentation without an approval?
This would be the approval tonight.
That was
Okay.
just a presentation.
So we're going to call this our approval for the entire project.
Just for the speaker sales.
But the
committee is-
project itself,
The
we did
committee
not
will bring
approve yet.
any project proposals to the board.
Okay.
This would just be that money could be allocated for
Okay.
that, not what they would do with it.
With that second sentence. Okay, that's fine.
But Mr. Haravi's aware that
Sounds good. All right, thank you. Number 7, athletics activities. DAC varsity swim team agreement. Board will take action to approve the varsity swim team agreement between Danville Area School District and Danville Area Community Center in the amount of $28,000 as presented. Any motion to approve?
A motion.
Motion from Dr. Gatachu, second.
Second.
Mrs. Heater, any questions or comments about this? This is something we've had in place for several years. It is renewable each year with terms that occasionally change. Terry?
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Okay. Discussion and possible action of track resurfacing. We just went through a lot of this, correct?
We did. This section would just be if any of those needed to be moved to a vote at this point. I
Is-
think we talked about that.
Yeah, is
being delayed at
anyone
this point.
of the mind that we need to try to push for a vote on anything tonight? I personally am not, but if, I'll certainly hear from anyone.
You can table this, right?
Okay, yeah, so we should move beyond this.
That's fine.
Jen, do we need a motion to table this, or should we?
You can table it. We just mainly wanted
Okay.
to have a placeholder for
Sure.
purposes of sunshine so that we didn't have to do the amendment.
We get a motion to table?
Make that
motion.
motion.
Mr. Reichard, second. Comments, questions? Gary, you take a vote on this? This is a motion to table 7.2
Two.
to 7.5.
No.
No?
7.4 I want removed if we're going to do that.
You want to try to act on that tonight?
Yeah, and possibly 7.3. Yeah, 7.3 also.
Okay, let's backtrack here a little bit. I'm going to certainly leave it open for discussion, but I don't, and I'm the one pushing this the hardest, I really think volleyball needs a little bit more research.
You think?
Yeah, I really think the committee should take a look at this. I mean, there's legitimate concerns. If we have 50 kids that are interested and 38 of them or 42 of them are playing other sports, we don't want to start something and find out there's only 6 or 8 or 10, whatever it is, that want to play volleyball. I think we really kind of drill down a little deeper on this, as much as I'm in support of it, if that's okay with you.
I'm fine. I was looking
Okay.
at possibly making it a sport for 23, 24.
Yeah, I'd love to, and I hope the athletic committee can meet pretty quickly and get on this and get Mr. Albertson in the room with you, because he's not here. But, so you're all right with holding that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Se-
7-4.
7-4, I would like to add a motion.
Well, technically, just procedurally, we already have a motion to table that has been motioned and seconded.
Right.
So procedurally, you already have a motion pending for a roll call, but
Okay.
So,
Indoor
so
track record
unless
ban.
there are individuals that want to amend the motion, so that way to do a carve out.
Mr. Riker, do you want to amend your motion or no?
No.
Dr. Gatachu, do you want to amend your motion or no?
I
You're
do
second.
Yeah, I
You're,
do.
it's not an amendment, but
Yeah,
you're good with it as it is?
I'm good with it.
Okay, as it stands right now, Richard, we'd be pushing this to the committee and acting on it later, unless we can get 5 that overturn the table.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I think we're ready for a vote.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
No.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Community and Curriculum and Management Report. Dr. Need anything?
I do not have anything.
About school and community relations. We already got all that, right? Okay. Finance. You have finance reports under 10.1. We get a motion to approve our finance reports.
We don't usually.
We don't approve them?
No,
Okay.
the reports and the cash receipts, we don't usually.
We're good with
approve,
them?
Just the
All right.
bills.
We got to approve the bills, though. 10.3, board will take action to approve the bills for payment for November 10th, 2022 through November 30th, 2022, as presented.
Motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Comments, questions? Terry?
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Abstain.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 10.4, budget transfer. The board will take action to approve a budget transfer for the 22-23 school year as presented. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Thank you. Second?
I second.
Second. Okay. Comments, questions? We're good. Terry?
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.1, personnel consent items. Board will take action to approve personnel items 11.1 to 11.7, 11.9 to 11.12 or 12. Anyone want anything removed or discussed before we move forward? Can I get a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
Dr. Gatachu, thank you. Second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Cooper. Questions, comments? Terry?
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
No.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes.
So in that grouping, we did just hire our new assistant superintendent, Mr. Moser. So congratulations, Mr. Moser. Certainly, if you would like to say hello to the board, please feel free to do so. I know that's not on the agenda, but we're excited to have you. Welcome, Mr. Moser. We're really happy to have you.
Welcome. Policy and insurance, number 12. Expulsion agreement, 12.1.
Question, where's 11 point,
Excuse me?
11.8?
We have another one? Oh, you're right. One of them was missing,
Yeah, they're not
11.8.
in
Oh,
the,
I apologize.
That's okay. I don't know if that was intentional.
No,
It
it
Let's
was
wasn't.
let's
No, it
take
was
care of
not.
it, though.
Yeah.
11.8, new hire, paraprofessional. The board will take action to approve the employment of Marius Stobo as a paraprofessional at Danville Primary School at the contracted hourly rate of $11.55 effective December 6, 2022, pending receipt of all clearances and paperwork. Motion to approve?
Motion.
Thank you.
second.
Second. Comments, questions? Terry?
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Dr. Katachu,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes,
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 12.1, expulsion agreement. The board will take action to approve the expulsion agreement for student C for a minimum of 24 days beginning November 14th, 2022. Motion? Second.
second.
No comments, questions? Be careful what we say, obviously. Terry, you're up.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Dr. Katachu,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes,
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Transportation bus driver list. The board will take action upon the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the bus driver list for the 22-23 school year as presented, pending the receipt of all required clearances and documentation.
motion.
Second? Second? Okay. Comments, questions? This is an updated list, or are there additional names?
Additional names.
Additional names, okay. Anyone else? Terry?
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Dr. Katachu,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes,
Mr. Reichard,
Abstain.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 13.2, discussion and possible action of middle school bus route. If we want to act on that tonight, we would have to modify the agenda, open up the public comment.
I would recommend public comment
Right.
because with respect to the different options that were presented.
Okay. Are we ready to act on that? This is the option that was presented to allow all of our students to have a bus that would cost $2,000. So there's a budget modification. It does need to be voted on. It does not sound terribly disruptive, correct?
I think we can, for sure, by January, make that happen on our end.
Okay, we'll say at the earliest date possible. I don't think we need to define a date, do we? No.
So I think
Okay,
that we'll just be in communication with the families.
okay.
I would like to take action. We've been talking about this for
Okay.
months.
I'm fine with that. If we can get a motion and a second to modify the agenda to establish option 1 regarding the addition of a bus route at the earliest possible date at a cost of $2,000. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
You motion, right?
Yeah, I would like to motion to add to the agenda for option 1
Mm-hmm. Okay.
of the bus route.
Okay. Second.
Second.
Okay. Any comments, questions? Your advice to Mr. Reichert?
I would
Yes,
advise he can abstain.
Abstain.
And then with respect, then open up for public comment as well.
Okay. We have now modified the agenda. We need to vote on the modification of the agenda
Yeah,
first.
and then I would do the public comment
Got
first
it.
because of motion from the floor.
Carrie, you want to take the vote on the modification of the agenda?
You do
Public comment
You want to do that
Public
first?
comment
Yeah.
first.
Okay. Public comment on this particular item. Mr. Moser? I would think that the reimbursement has not been applied to this, but I'll defer to, right?
That would be true.
So that would actually reduce the cost. Yeah, that would reduce the cost. Thank you. Yep. Okay, any other public comment? Any other public comment? Ready to vote?
Ready? Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Abstain.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes, thank you. We now have a bus for all of our students.
Nope, that was adding it to the agenda.
Yeah,
I'm
he has
sorry.
to add
Now
it
we
to the
have to-
agenda, so
Yeah,
now we can do
I'm
that.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm one step ahead here. Okay. So our next step would be to actually
Move on
add-
that item, correct.
option one.
Correct.
Correct.
One, okay? Could we have a motion to add option one and what it contained as a bus route beginning at the earliest possible date to our agenda? Or, I'm sorry, not to our agenda, to actually add the bus.
Motion.
I'll second.
Second. Comments, questions? Go ahead. You got it.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard. Abstain.
Yes. I don't know. Abstain or should I, can I?
I would recommend abstaining
Abstain,
just in
'cause
case.
that's-
Okay.
This is the one with the money attached.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes.
We seen, I'll just go home.
15 minutes.
Board concerns and items for the next meeting agenda.
Less.
Anything you'd like to bring up at this point for discussion? We need to act on. Let me take a look at my list quickly. I am going to ask that we, at some point, under policy 602, we're supposed to establish board goals before we get heavily into the budgetary process. I think that's something that the board previous, I came on in February, you had established some goals. I think Dr. Gatachu and Mr. Huron and Mr. Reichard, and I think we should probably revisit and see where we stand. I'm not asking to do that tonight. It's already been a long night, and we know our annual financial report's not there yet anyway. But it is in the budgeting section 602. So I think we'd be remiss in not establishing what we would like to see priorities. So we'll include that in our January agenda if we could. as
Okay,
a
and
discussion.
we would have those documented somewhere that I.
That'd be great. Perfect. Okay. Any other items for the next agenda? All right, we have another public comment on any topic that you would like to bring up. Is there anyone that would like to speak? We have anything else? Anything you need? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion.
Anyone opposed? Good. We're adjourned.